to Talk of the Bay. This is your host, Suki Wessling, and I am sitting in for my co-host, Christine Barrington. I'm going to start today's show in 1987. That's the year that my then boyfriend and I went to graduate school in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He was from South America, and he'd only been to the Bay Area and New York City, two places where good coffee culture had taken root. Michigan was still stuck in the 1950s with percolators at home and bitter, watery stuff served at what were called coffee shops. You should be able to hear my air quotes there. But like magic, just after we moved there, a storefront was altered to say, "Coming soon, Espresso Royale." One South American's graduate education was saved. Years later, in 1996, I moved to Santa Cruz and struck up a conversation with the owner of a cafe with the same name on Pacific Avenue, and it turned out that it was the same small chain. It's now called Lulu Carpenters. The reason I want to start here is that Santa Cruz has often been part of, if not in the center of, drink revolutions. Outside of Indian restaurants, the first place where I was able to order chai was India Joe's, and we had a number of early chai manufacturers in town. The kombucha craze was fueled here, and not to mention the early adoption of craft beer and hard cider. What's up with Santa Cruz and drink revolutions? Joining me today to discuss his part in drink revolutions and all sorts of other questions relating to coffee, business, and culture is Jared Truby, who helped to develop specialty coffee culture for 20 years as the original employee of Verve Coffee, creating the One and One, a drink used internationally, co-hosting the most listened to coffee podcast for 5 years, and co-founding Cat and Cloud Coffee. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you. How are you?
I am good, and I am going to tell listeners that this is my very first time going solo at the board, although I have my faithful engineer, Dan, standing behind me and helping out. So it's pretty exciting, but at the same time, a little scary. So
Strong start.
So here you are on my maiden voyage, Jared. So I'd like to start with a question about culture, because I noticed that your podcast was only tangentially about coffee. Mm-hmm. Episodes had titles like Creating with Empathy and Life is What You Make It, and this is my favorite, Very Rich and Very Sad. So what is coffee culture, and how do you see your role as a business person selling a product, but also as a human trying to make the world a better place?
Straight off with the big one. Okay. I like it. I guess I will start with, I see culture in general, right? I mean, people kind of explain cultures, this is just the way we do things, but there's a lot of responsibility as a business owner, or as a human, I would say, but as a business owner in my case, to foster a culture that matters. And so there was, growing up in specialty coffee, the culture has kind of had a lot of ambiguity. It's all over the place. The thing I think that most people might agree upon is if you're going to visit specialty coffee cafes, at least for a time, you're not necessarily going to have the nicest people. You're going there to experience this thing that maybe is too cool for you, which I just never resonated with. I hated it, to be honest with you, and my business partners did too. So even in my help with establishing Verve, so much of what we wanted to do simply was to connect people to this opportunity to taste something that was amazing. Now, if you fast forward to culture and how we look at it now, it's ultimately about finding true meaning, every individual finding true meaning and connection in their work. At the end of the day, whatever we do in our lives comes down to memories and experiences. You're not going to have money at the end of it. You're not going to have anything else that really ends up mattering. And so we have this kind of internal North Star that has to do with that concept. We want everybody to feel connected and inspired at Cat and Cloud, whether you are a brand new concierge, is what we call the person who is like the most intro level, whether you're a barista, whether you're a manager or a team leader, or you are in the executive level. You want to be, your whole gig is to inspire connection by creating a memorable experience. And so we could unpack that forever and ever and ever, but that is probably the quickest way I could sum up that banger of a question. Well,
I started today with a little reconnaissance. I went through the back door of your Aptos location and was cheerfully greeted by two employees, one of whom admired my pink hair. And then I was greeted warmly again when I went to the counter and again complimented on my pink hair. So there's a theme here. And, I realize that your employees are humans and thus, to a certain extent, are making these choices themselves. But it also seems like creating culture in your cafes is particularly important. And I'll point out that I am the people who are working there are of my kids' generation, and they just were totally welcoming. Like you said, there was no sense of we're cooler than you're too old for us or anything like that. It was all about them looking at me and trying to make a connection. And is this something how do you find employees that can do that, are willing to do that? I mean, there are plenty of places that you go where the employees just sort of, what do you want?
Oh, it's the worst. Well, and again, another belief. It maybe feels like an idealistic belief, but I actually think there's amazing team members and human beings everywhere who are just wanting to feel like what they do matters. And there's two parts to that. There's the part that we commit to, which is we're going to challenge you. We're going to give you feedback. We are going to push you harder than you will be pushed at most jobs, especially ones that most people consider intro level, with the belief that if you are made to believe that you can share your personal gifts and who you are with the world, that the world will be a better place. And just because you're working in coffee, a lot of what we train and what we show and what we speak into is you can share every single part of who you are behind that counter in an authentic way while still trying to do exactly what we need you to do, right? Which is serve amazing coffee, connect with guests, and ultimately, keep the place clean and moving fast. So there is a fundamental a belief there that if somebody is willing, which that's where the interview process comes into play,
yes.
then they can be a great fit. And like I said, I don't think there are bad employees anywhere. I think there's bad leaders, and bad's the wrong word. There are leaders and visionaries and business owners who are not intentional enough and caring enough with their training and foundation. And that's where there's not clarity for the people who are working for you. And then, that just becomes cyclical. They feel like it doesn't matter, so I'm not going to care.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you're reminding me of a conversation I had with someone else that I had on the show in the past who I posted a picture on Facebook of a local business that had put up a little sign saying something like, "Do you think our service stinks? Well, it's all because people are sitting around drawing unemployment instead of getting jobs. It's not our fault."
Oh my.
And this local business owner responded, if you are a good employee, you're going to have good employer, you're going to have good employees. And I think the problem here might not be with the people sitting around drawing unemployment. I mean, besides the fact that was disproven, but in any case, it reminds me of what you're saying, that, this is a hard time to be an employer. So, a lot of businesses are, especially with entry-level hourly employees, they're having trouble attracting them. So are you having trouble attracting to them? And if not, how are you getting them?
Yeah, I mean, we went through our phase, right? I think there was a time when people were unsure of what it looked like to work because of COVID, and that's different, I think, than what you were just previously, talking about. We are doing fine, and it has been a challenge, absolutely been a challenge. Not so much though, because we weren't finding enough people. We were being, I think, for a while, slightly overly selective, and that was something that was a great learning experience for us. And this is actually where myself and my business partners, we got to step up and remind our entire leadership team of exactly what I just told you, which is, hey, we need to put our money where our mouth is. If we are a company that develops people and makes them amazing, then they don't have to bat 1,000 in an interview. You need to hire for potential. And so we got out of our own way, and yes, we are more than fully staffed, and we're back up to 70 plus employees for the first time. I call them team members, but most of the world calls them employees. 70 plus team members for the first time since before the pandemic, and I'm really proud of that.
So how do you think do things differently than, say, a place like Starbucks?
You know what? Truthfully, I think there was a time when Starbucks probably did things similarly to a lot of the up and coming amazing businesses in the world. What I think happens and can consistently happen is the larger you get, the more intentional you have to be with leadership, and the more intentional you have to be with the a lot of the basics when it comes down to values and behaviors. So I think what happens with places like Starbucks is they get to this place where they're kind of forced via investors and all of those things that can make the world hard for businesses. They are forced to produce or else. And in that context, what you have to do is kind of hit the common denominators, which is we have to be fast, it has to be the same, we have to so on and so forth. And so, Starbucks helped pave the way for companies like ours. I think that what we do now that is potentially, and I want to say and believe that is going to be maybe game changing in business in general, is you start with your foundational values, your mission, your orientation. You share with people on your team, this is what this company is about. It's more than coffee, right? You have the opportunity to literally make people's days better or worse. Most people's best part of their day comes down to what that experience at the cafe is. Mm-hmm. And you need to recognize that that's physical, human to human. They look forward to this, especially if we're going to go into a recession. Like, most people will skip going out to dinner, but they're probably not going to skip that coffee. And if that coffee experience makes them feel happy, you genuinely made the world a better place today in one of what you might assume is the simplest ways. So, we take that little part, and then we commit to, this is where we're going as a company. We have a value system that this is how we behave. Let us try to make you the best you can be in this context. And if you're here for 1 year, great. If you're here for 5 years, great. If you're here for 6 months, great. What happens at the end is that if you lean in and you believe and you do this with us, that you're going to be a shoo-in for whatever job you're going to be at next. And you're going to feel more confident in the skills that you've collected while you're here. And that is a win for everybody.
I am speaking. This is KSQD Santa Cruz. I'm speaking with Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee. And, I had, looked around to see what were you doing. And obviously you've gotten bigger I'm assuming that you might be expanding. I don't know if you want to go into future plans, but how does a company get bigger and maintain these sorts of ways of treating employees and keep on mission, basically? And are there any bigger companies that you look to as inspirations in this way?
So, yeah, to answer all those questions, we are working on expanding, and we signed a lease in Los Gatos.
All right,
which is
congratulations.
A huge deal. Thank you. Expansion, though, is not for expansion's sake. Expansion is the ability to provide for people who want to do it, right? And so in order to do that, you have to trust, for one, which I think most business owners, I would argue that's their downfall. They're not able to say, here's the clear picture of what is very important, and then they don't. It feels harsh to say this, but I actually believe it's true. They just don't want to spend the energy holding the line for their up and coming leaders, and because of that, they never become free as owners. So I went into this business, as did my business partners, and it hasn't happened yet, saying, we need this business to run in such a way that we can take a month away, because let's face it, small business is hard and everybody needs to love it to do it. But in order to really, if you're honest with yourself, you're doing it for freedom. And if you can never be free enough to walk away and know that everything's going to be okay, then you're not setting yourself up for true success, in my opinion. So everything kind of comes with that caveat. Are we setting up the next generation, one, to be successful for themselves, one, to be successful for the entire company and leading forward, right, with a mission and a vision and a value set, and then all of the work and all the details that make all of the previous that I just said a yes, that's the work that an owner does. So, I mean, a good owner, I would say, does that. So like I said, we have a clear mission, which is literally this: to inspire connection by creating memorable experiences. And we talk about that in depth Then we have our values system, which I won't overly go into, but it leads into hospitality and exactly what it means, and mostly what it means to us, not what it doesn't mean, right? So you have to consistently help people who have not had the experience that we do to just lean back into the truth, not get sidetracked, not get off topic, not get sucked into, there's things that matter in the world. For instance, like all of the political things that have come to be that are absolutely important and that really do matter. But you can, as an individual, bring your individual agendas and beliefs and kind of try to bring it into what the company does. And so we have to sometimes check that. And it's not checking that to say that this isn't important. It's just like, hey, this is what we do as a company. All of these other things are very important and they're valiant, and we have an opinion. But if it kind of distracts from what we're trying to do as a company, then we have to kind of rein it in. And so that's I think what it's almost like parenting, right? Mm-hmm. You're just over and over again repointing in the right direction. And fortunately, the team that we have is they're open. They understand, they get it, and we're the kind of owners and bosses that will have the conversations and talk it through. We're not just like, go do this or else, and just like, let's not talk, we're not a thumb on them. So I don't know if that answers it completely. I think that paints a picture of how it works to grow a business.
Mm-hmm. And so, this gets at the whole question. There's this tension in this country that we are a capitalist country with also, and the way that things work, it's not pure capitalism, obviously, and it's not no matter what anyone says, pure socialism. that we have this tension in this country between letting businesses do what they do best so that they can make money, so that they can make the country successful. They can support themselves, they can support their employees. But on the other hand, coming from the other side, making sure that businesses are not taking advantage of people and that people are put first. And when you look at that struggle, what are some things that you want to make sure that your business wouldn't do, or some things that you see when you look out there and there's a business that really irks you, what are some things that you just know that if you got really big, what would you want to make sure you avoid?
Well, I guess we opened with a lot of these things, I would say. So I can tell you the things that we have done already that everybody said, you can't do that. And we did. And one of which is, we have had a 4-week for our full-time employees. We have a 4-week vacation stipend, which is essentially PTO for 4 weeks. And we have 2 weeks for the part-timers, for anybody who's under that 30-hour a week mark, a year that they can use. And, they get reimbursed for that work. So we kind of started with some of those things. We do full medical benefits, and then we do half medical benefits for our part-time employees. And we do the 401k thing for full-time. And other things that we do as well is we bring team members along on experiences with us. So I believe at this point we've sent like around 40 people to coffee origin regions so that they can experience what it's like to buy, what the process is to buy coffee and to connect with farmers, so that they understand it's not marketing. I don't want it to be marketing with that. Obviously, there is a marketing that's necessary in terms of telling a story, but I don't like the feeling of, we're a direct trade because I went to another country and shook hands with somebody. And I'm like, great, thank you for doing that. Like, are you direct trade here in Santa Cruz because you go to the farmer's market and shake hands too? Like, it's just, anyway. Mm-hmm. I digress. But so that's a few of the things we do. We have a program called the Best Friends Club, which started in Honduras, and we're expanding it to Colombia next. And that is with every bag of coffee bought that's in that program, you get $1 set aside to go back directly to the farmers that we work with, because there's two things, and I know I'm kind of rambling about the things we do, but I just think these are the things that make a business matter. Is you do your best to take care of people properly, right? And so, I'm talking about vacation. That came from growing up in coffee and having to be like, great, I'd love to take a vacation. So I don't have the money for that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to open on my Friday, and then I'm going to leave town, and then I like to close on my Monday so that I can get, I have no rest time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that so? We wanted to provide opportunity there, and then medical's medical. That's kind of straightforward. And then this other thing is taking care of the partners that we work with, and genuinely taking care of them. So, like
Mm-hmm.
I said, direct trade for us is we connect with people, and this isn't everywhere. I can't say this is a perfect system, but for us in Honduras, we meet with people who are just coming into specialty coffee. They have now started to collect more money for their coffee, and now we are offering also like a bonus per bag sold. And these bonuses have officially at this point like paid for gallbladder surgery for a farm manager. They have provided somebody a whole year of fertilizer and cleaning and the ability to hire pickers. Like, it's just things that really help take stress off of our partners.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, my friends in Honduras, that's where I focus
Mm-hmm.
in terms of buying. So we do a lot like that. And then again, we'll continue to evolve. It's as we get bigger, it's one of those things that used to be that every employee, this is our learning, right? Every employee is going to be able to go to a coffee origin region. And that worked for the first, I don't know, 3-4 years. But now that we're at 70 and attrition is a thing, right? People come and go. And we want to make sure that we're rewarding the right people now. And it's not that everybody who works for us doesn't deserve something awesome, but the ones who really want to invest in the company should, and in our mission and our values should ultimately get some of these rewards. So, we've adjusted over the years, but we'll continue to. And that's some of what we do.
And so what would you say to probably the majority of larger businesses who say, oh, we just can't afford that?
It's not true. It's just not true. If you're creative and you want it and you feel like it's important, you absolutely can't afford it. And I think just all that means is that, we as business owners, the three of us, we didn't take as much, and, we would continue to not take as much as we probably could in order to provide more for others. And again, that is a belief in the long play, not the short play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean when you look at companies like yours, you realize that it can be done. And then the question is whether you can just keep on scaling it up. And at what point, if you feel like it's not, I know a lot of business owners, when it gets to a certain point, it's like, oh, wait, this wasn't fun for me anymore, because it's not. So I'm not saying you'll get there anytime soon, but that's an interesting phase, I think, to look at with businesses that start with a really clear mission, and in your case, a strong sense of business morals. How as you scale up, where do you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We'll be 6 years old at the end of September, and we're currently, actually, the two owners and myself are really, and I'm excited about it, kind of deep in the next set of evolution. So we have refined and clarified our values 2 times now, and we're working on doing it a third. And that it's interesting because they don't change; it just becomes more honest, and it becomes more of this is what we set out to do, and that's the learning process for us, and just the maturation of who we are. In that context, I genuinely don't think that this isn't going to be fun or valuable, because we are putting the attention and intention into what it means to run a business. And running a business isn't for the sake of running a business. We want it to be something that genuinely impacts the world and the people who work with us. And we have already kind of set out to personally put our stamp on portions of work within the company that light us up and really resonate with who we are as humans and wanting to share our gifts. And so, the fundamental belief being, if we can get everybody who works for us to really see that we will accept, and not only that, foster the ability for you to use your gifts within this company, that there's an energy that comes with that. There's a connection. And, it's, if you think of any team or anything that kind of maybe in your whole life that you felt the most connected to, it's when you're working together towards a common purpose. I just genuinely believe that. People talk about team building in their businesses, and they're like, yeah, let's have a party. Let's do this and that and that and this. And it's like, those are all things. But if nobody is already really connected in pursuit of something common, those just kind of become hangouts that come and go. And even in the best sense, right? Even in
Yeah.
companies that are hyper successful, if your team is not unified in pursuing something, like you're missing something. So I
Yeah.
guess that's my sum up. If we're working together to try to do something, you're automatically bonding. You're automatically high-fiving about creatively problem solving. You're automatically excited to share with the executive team about, I had this really hard conversation this week. We broke through. Now we're on the same page and we're moving forward,
Hmm.
and we're solving all these problems. Like when that's the excitement, it's beautiful.
Hmm.
It's neat. That's what
Yeah.
everybody in the world loves to do, right?
Yeah. And I
I
mean,
think.
you're talking about this, and it's funny without really knowing. If somebody had just tuned in, they might not know that you're talking about running a coffee company, a cafe company, that you're just, selling coffee, and but you talk about it in terms of community. And I was actually, my first job out of college was at a corporation where they brought in a company called Leadership Through Quality. And they put us through all these exercises, but the thing that was really funny is they had no idea that this was actually a really tight group of people, and we all hated the training. We had already done a lot just organically of what the training was trying to do, but they couldn't recognize that because they were looking at it from the outside. And really what it came down to was that when they said they didn't have enough money to have the weekly donut hour, that was, that was much more problematic. So it's the things, what you're talking about, community and connection, are the things that people talk about in every area. I was just writing about the nonprofit that I'm on the board of and talking about community, and that's what we talk about where I work as a teacher, and fostering community. And because that's the most basic thing about humans, is that we're community oriented. And as soon as as we saw during the pandemic, as soon as you take the community away from people literally can start to go crazy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate what you just said. I think that's what people miss. Again, you have to have a purpose, and that's your job as a leader and a business owner. But that purpose, I think, just needs to be more meaningful than we go out and we make the best coffee on planet Earth. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, what does that even mean? How does
exactly.
that affect anybody?
Uh-huh.
That hits maybe 2% of all the workers in the potential world who are like, ooh, I want to do that. And it's
Yeah,
like, great,
no kidding.
so it needs to be stronger than that and more meaningful than that, and in more than one way.
Yeah. So we will be right back with more talk about coffee. I would like to next move into, a wider sort of thing, where coffee culture, where did coffee come from? All that sort of good stuff. This is Talk of the Bay. You're listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, 90.7 FM, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Talk of the Bay. We are speaking with Jared Truby, who is the one of the owners of Cat and Cloud Coffee, and we've been talking about all sorts of things. And I would like to move on to the question of coffee in general. I mean, first of all, I guess I'll ask, how did you get interested in coffee?
I got my dad. I mean, that's the simple answer. He, when I was young, would somehow found the different, he found Kenya, he found Guatemalan coffee. I don't exactly know where. And then, they smelled different. And then he finally let me taste them, which I, did not agree with me. The taste did not taste as good as the smell. And he attempted to have a specialty coffee shop, and specialty foods, and kind of his dad had a holistic, kind of like a New Leaf style shop when he was young, way up in Sandpoint, Idaho. So my dad kind of tried to do that, but it wasn't his thing. And so when that didn't work out, I actually took a job at this cafe in Chico. I grew up in Chico, California.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So I
Okay.
took
So
a
he
job.
wanted specialty coffee in Chico, which is not the the fit that you would expect at that time, I guess.
Totally. And
Yeah.
so there was the one coffee shop my dad always said, that's the good one. It was called the Naked Lounge. And Naked Lounge did have, I'd call it faux specialty coffee, in the context of they purchased Grand Cru, which is called whatever, it means great growths, but they purchased high grown Guatemalan coffee. And they did microfoam. So for everybody who doesn't, maybe everybody in the world knows what microfoam is now, but microfoam is foam that looks like wet paint. It's like chrome texture, and you almost
Uh-huh.
can't tell that it's foam, and that takes skill.
Uh-huh.
So they did that, and I got a job there. And in order to work there, you had to pass a test, and that test had to do with, details about coffee. It covered the coffee belt. So the coffee grows between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. It grows best at elevations, blah, blah, so on and so forth. Fact that most people maybe don't know is that each coffee plant only produces approximately 1 pound of coffee per year. So every
My
bag that you
goodness.
look at, yeah, every bag you look at on a shelf is an entire year basically of a crop of coffee. So
Wow.
it is, yeah, it's not taken lightly for those of us who care. And that's why things like the Best Friends Club I mentioned earlier matter so much to me. Anyway, I took that job, and I'm not a neurotypical human. I have pretty severe ADHD, and
All
although
the best of us are not so
thank you,
neurotypical.
thank you,
Go ahead.
thank you. I had a lot of social anxiety, and getting behind a counter allowed me to kind of, it was just like, it's okay. Express yourself, connect with guests and people, and have fun while you're doing this thing. And it's perfect for somebody like me who can physically move around really fast and have a conversation at the same time. So started doing that. And one of the two owners of Verve worked at a sister company that was a restaurant. And then the second owner, so the first one, his name's Ryan. He worked at a sister company and would every so often kind of cover a shift at the cafe Naked Lounge. And then the other guy, Colby, he would come in and get soy cappuccinos. And, through the years, he basically said to me one day, "Oh, you make the best soy cappuccinos." And the long story short there is Colby ended up purchasing just Chico Naked Lounge. So there were
Mhm.
more of them. And when Colby bought the Naked Lounge, we thought we were awesome because, I was the best barista in Chico. And, so he's like, let's go to a barista competition. It's going to be awesome. And I show up there, and I promptly get last place by a landslide. And we both
Uh,
knew, okay,
the
well,
world of
especially he knew.
the world of
Yeah,
coffee is bigger than a cafe in Chico, even if it's the best cafe in Chico.
absolutely.
So, you know, I don't want to go into the whole history of coffee because there's a whole lot there, but I do want to recommend to people, if they are interested in the whole history or if part of the history of coffee, that there's a really excellent series on the history and science of coffee by one of my favorite podcasts, Gastropod. And so maybe just something a little bit more specific about where we came from with coffee. What stands out to you in the history of the West's obsession with coffee, which, obviously had to start where in a time when things were very different, but why coffee, and why so much interest in it, similar to the interest in, I mean, it's getting to the point where it's rivaling the interest in wine and terroir and all that.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I think what you just said is kind of it, right? It was a few people, and I kind of happened to just get into it at the right time. I think there was an understanding that coffee, which maybe people don't know this, coffee has 800 times more volatile aromatics than wine does.
Mm-hmm.
So coffee is amongst, if not the most complex beverage on earth. And I just think what happened is, wine's old, food's old. It's been around forever. There's tons of experience. There's tons of people who have just dove into viticulture and then just everything, right? It's all been studied. Then there's this thing, coffee, because it doesn't really grow in the States or in Italy and all these places where a lot of the food culture, kind of France, right? It was just found kind of later, and the details kind of started slowly coming in. Oh, wow, this can be amazing if we don't blend it. Oh, it can taste, microclimates make a difference. So,
Mm-hmm.
You flash back to the early 2000s essentially, and there just weren't a lot of companies pursuing that. You had your Stumptown, your Intelligentsia, your Blue Bottle, kind of, and a few others. And then, we came along at Verve, and we were like, we want to do this too. And Ritual, and it just wasn't a lot of people. So we were all condensed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really kind of a magical thing when all of the best people in the world, at least in the United States, I guess, are going to these same places, and we're consistently interacting and pushing each other for a period of 5 to 10 years before, like you said, it's blowing up, and now everybody kind of thinks that they can go start their own specialty coffee company. And it's not that they can't, but you can't get around the reps and the time and the experience that comes with
it's
truly getting to know it.
It's the whole Pink Zinfandel phenomenon, which was that there was, one brand that got really popular and everybody else started making this really sweet, sticky stuff that ended up to the point now where nobody will drink the stuff. So.
Yep.
So I mean,
so that's it.
So
coffee's just new and fresh. Like we're still 30-ish years into this thing, genuinely, right? 30 or so years into really exploring what specialty coffee can be. And because of that, it's a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting, it's got another interesting difference with wine in that the news for alcohol seems to keep getting worse as far as the health news goes. And the news for coffee seems to keep getting better. I mean, as long as you don't overindulge. if you're lying in bed at night going, you're overdoing it. But so talk a little bit about that, the health discoveries that have been happening recently.
Yeah, I mean, in general, right? The simplest and most exciting is people don't realize that it's where they get most of their antioxidants, unless you're really into vegetables and fruits and eating a lot of them. Like most people are getting the majority of their antioxidants from coffee. There's anti-aging. There's correlations to, staying away from Alzheimer's. There's correlations to actually better heart health. Again, like you said, as long as you're not over consuming. And I think most people, if they have adverse reactions to coffee, I would honestly say most of that has to do with gut health more so than the actual coffee itself affecting a human being personally. Just because it can play with your gut microbiome for sure if you drink too much of it. And so, again, in order to kind of contrast that, just eat a lot more vegetables and fruits and maybe take some probiotics. But I would say there's those people who are like, yeah, even decaf gets me. And I'm like, well, decaf is 99.7% caffeine free. So maybe, like, I'm not going to say no because it's your life and your feelings. I'm not trying to, invalidate you, but I would say it's one of those other things. It's a gut bacteria balance. And anyway, all that to say, yes, coffee is very good for you at the end of the day, especially if it's made well. And if you're drinking it black, even more so.
So you're not a believer in putting anything in your coffee?
Oh, I'm a believer in however, it's just like wine. The best wine is the wine you like. I would just say, if it's same thing. I would always tell people this at our cafe. They're like, for any coffee snobs who tried to work for us and are like, oh, somebody comes in, they're going to get with sugar or vanilla, this. And it's like, let's make them taste it black. And it's like, why? If they don't have a good time, they're going to go drink the coffee somewhere else. And our coffee deserves to be drank however they like it. Because again, we are holistically helping third world countries and people have a better life. So this is not just about what we do. This is about serving the best coffee that we believe in, that we buy from Honduras. This isn't about you. This is about Honduras and us. So get over yourselves.
Yeah. As someone who worked in a coffee house as a college student, I'm just thinking about, what it was like and what it must have been like for people on the other side of the counter.
We've all been there. I'm not saying I wasn't that for a minute. I just recognized real quick, this is bigger than me and it matters.
So let's talk about some of the ethical stuff, and the ones that I think are really at the forefront right now are sort of intertwined: the fair trade movement and the climate crisis. So from your perspective, let's start with the fair trade movement. Why do people who work in the coffee industry need to pay really close attention to this?
Oh my. I mean, fair trade has developed so much. So, I mean, props to Santa Cruz Coffee Roasters. They were some of the first to do fair trade in, I think, the world, to be honest. I could be wrong about that detail. You can fact check me on it. So props to them. But fair trade has evolved a ton. Originally, fair trade was like, you're going to pay a certain amount above the C market price. Whatever that amount is, has changed a lot. And there are a million different iterations of fair trade. It's a valuable thing to invest in fair trade because you're essentially paying, I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of like a co-op price. And that what I said is that there's going to be a certain amount of money that fair trade coffee is going to get that is above the C market. The C market is literally the commodities market, if you don't know that, everybody, which is, it's going to rise and fall with climate change. And actually, with climate change being a problem, coffee has become more expensive.
Yeah,
period.
and coffee has to grow in shade, right?
No, but it is helpful and extremely helpful.
And deforestation thus affects
Yep,
coffee.
problem. Yes, big problem and a real bummer. And again, Brazil is a big determining factor in how the sea market performs. So if Brazil, one has a weird year with weather, then coffee is expensive, and then deforestation in general that's just lame. Whether it's for coffee or not, it's a big waste of our lives. Please don't do it. Please don't. However. Gosh, what was it? It was a two-parter. I just got lost in.
And the second part is the climate crisis, because, one of the things that I notice is that a lot of people really don't connect the dots between their daily lives and the reality of the climate crisis. And so coffee is a really good example of something that we don't grow in the United States. It is grown elsewhere. It has to be shipped. It has to be processed. It takes energy, and also the warming climate in a lot of places might change where coffee can be grown, or if it can be grown. The problem with, as the climate changes, the movement of pests from one location to another. So what, talk a little bit about that. Because the climate crisis is just huge, but a lot of times people don't connect it to their morning cup of coffee.
Yeah, so, again, I'll speak mostly about Honduras because that's where I physically go and I can speak to what's happening there. Yes, we have seen a lot more, which is great, planting of trees because the weather is getting hotter, right? Plants are getting a little more baked. The good news, right, with planting more trees is that's one way to combat it. So great. We're already in a tropical place, though, so there's trees everywhere. Interesting things that you might not assume, though, with this is that there are colder temperatures sometimes in periods of the year that are not expected. And we have this thing called roya, which is called coffee leaf rust, that'll come as well. And it's a fungus that has gotten worse because of climate change. And we're trying to figure that out. There is, you're right, pests, things like berry borer and different bugs, basically, that come and eat the plants. So there are things we are doing in coffee and in specialty. There's a process called anaerobic, and they're using less water in general. Anaerobic is essentially kind of like it's a fermentation process, but it's a sealed fermentation process. They pick all their coffee, they throw it in a barrel of water, and they seal it off instead of using a ton of water and re-rinsing. And there's places like Costa Rica that you have to use recycled water, and they're trying to become carbon neutral. I don't know if they've gotten there yet, but they're working on it.
That's interesting that they have to use recycled water. That's
yeah.
great.
So there's no quote unquote washed coffee, which is one of the multiple there's 3-ish now, 4 with anaerobic, but processes in coffee that are traditional. And yeah, in Costa Rica, you'll never get a fully washed coffee by definition. There will always be what they call honey process down there because of the water they're using. Yeah, and that's great. People are working on this. Infrastructure and countries are really what kind of make or break these pushes, though, right? There's no help in Honduras. Whatever it is subject to where I go on a mountain and kind of the communities there, and they really take care of each other. But there's no help. They had climate change, 2 huge hurricanes that demolished Honduras within, I don't know, maybe less than 6 months. Horrible. Wow. And it messed with the coffee, everything. And that's for sure climate change. A few of my farmer friends lost their homes. And again, some of this Best Friends Club helped a lot, and subsidies and GoFundMe's from some other coffee friends of mine in the Bay Area. It's been pretty hard, and it will continue to be hard. I also just believe in resilience, and I believe in our ability to continue to heal and do better. And, I'm a little bit of an idealist, and I'm like, something's going to happen. Like all that kelp, everything, it's there for a reason. It's going to start having a superpower at some point. We're going to get saved, but humans need to do better.
We do tend to, pull ourselves up at the last minute with all sorts of different crises that we've gone through. in the history of humanity. This is KSQD, and you're listening to Talk of the Bay, and I'm speaking to Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Cafe, Cat and Cloud Coffee, and you know, and I think that it's really important to think about how our personal actions do contribute to things, but there are people who say, "Oh, we need big government solutions. What I do doesn't make any difference." What would you tell them about, yes, come buy our coffee because
I mean, come buy our coffee because we are investing
because you're awesome,
in betterment.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly because we're awesome, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Simple as that.
But do you think what is the argument for we shouldn't just wait around for governments to fix this?
No, I mean, you can't. I get it that it's overwhelming. It is. You feel like you're just one person who, doesn't matter. But I can say for a fact, I was one person with two other humans who had a dream to do business better and to do business that mattered. And, nearly 6 years in, right, we are going to have 5 cafes and a roastery. And I can tell you that the money from the Best Friends Club, let alone the money that we just pay, because we do pay more for the coffees we buy. Mm-hmm. The Best Friends Club alone is helping an area in Honduras dramatically. They make, on average in American money, the average is around $300 a month. So when you get to give somebody $600, $1,200 cash, that's a big deal, right? That's 2+ months of money that they get to use to help. And they care about the climate there. They care about their land. Like, that is what they live off of. Yeah. They plant crops. It all comes down to crops. So, you get to choose to vote with your dollar. And you can vote with your dollar at my cafes because we have the nicest people. And you can vote at our cafes and this is just humans. I'm not making them be nice. You can vote at our cafes because we have the most intention. You can vote at our cafes because I think the coffee's great, and you can vote at our cafes for all these other reasons, which is that we're here to do something more than just sell you coffee. And, if everybody could believe in themselves that they could do that, again, this goes back to the whole vision of our company. If everybody believed that their gifts mattered and they had a little bit of courage to share them, then the world would actually be better. And it's scary to do that. I get it. People are judgmental, and they just, my whole life, I took a backseat to what I believed in, and I just fortunately got to where it is now, and I'm still learning that. There's no way I'm killing it.
Yeah.
But if you're courageous and you believe in something and you actually start leaning in, you can make a huge difference.
So I have a question for you because, there's a lot of people in my stage of life. I have 2 young adult children, over what we're leaving young people with. And you obviously are in a business where I think everybody that I saw this morning in your cafe were under 30, certainly. So you work with people who are directly in the middle of this, that they're growing up in a world racked by a pandemic and dealing with the influence of toxic media and experiencing the first cataclysmic effects of climate change. And what do you see them? How do you see them as maybe different from the way you were when you were younger? And what are the things that you see in them that make you really hopeful?
Well, what I think that I see that makes me hopeful is they're far more advanced at a young age. They're able to do a lot more. And again, that's the positive and negative of the internet, everything at all the time. Whatever you want, it's there all the time. That's positive and negative.
Yes.
But if you can foster, again, this belief in self where if you have something in you and you have a genuine, vision for how the world can be better, and if you can foster that belief in self and then also, challenge people to be better through their work, then when they leave, they're going to take a part of that with them and impact whatever happens next. And that's, the longer they're with us, the more impact they'll have. And it doesn't really matter how long, they're going to have some more impact, some more self confidence and a louder voice and the ability to communicate better. And all of those things, right, are contributing to a better future at the most basic level. And then everybody's going to be different. I can't assume everybody's going to go out and be a visionary and start something amazing. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if 10 to 20% of the people who work with us go on to do things that really can impact the world. And that's my job, to foster that in whatever capacity is possible.
Uh-huh. What are some things that you notice about them as people, and is there anything that you notice that's really different in response to this, growing up in this world that's very different from the one that you grew up in?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the thing that it kind of makes me the most sad is there is way more fear. And I grew up anxious, but that is the part that we're trying to actively combat. That, and I'm sure that's social media, but there's so much more fear around not being accepted and not fitting in. And I can relate to that. I had a weird life growing up, but that to me is the thing that that has felt that feels the most challenging. This is like please just, you are literally doing all these amazing things and it's all right there at your fingertips. You have to believe in this, how I can see it, and how you don't have to do it how I want you to do it, but I need you to believe that. So that's the thing that I'm most afraid of. And then, like I said, on the flip side, they're so much more advanced. I mean, people who in their young 20s are able to do things that, I wasn't even remotely ready to do. They're far more skilled. They're far more understanding. They're far more genuinely empathetic and accepting. And then at the same time, just blasted consistently with this contradictory belief system via social media and this need to do something that's kind of just not the truth, I guess. It's, so you're kind of battling that.
All right. Well, we just have another minute. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, you obviously are someone who is hoping to have a positive effect in the world. What do you hope to see as a change for the better for your children's generation?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, I have 2 daughters, so I would just like to see a lot more genuine acceptance and equality across the board, and more belief in people, and a lot, and in believing that if somebody has a truth to share, that there's opportunity and chances, especially when it's not said. Like I said, I'm not neurotypical. I want people to give kids a chance. They're going to create things. And we probably can all say this of ourselves. We've all created something that everybody said we couldn't. We've all done something that everybody said we couldn't. And I think that's what I'd like to see, women, more power. There's so much wisdom in that. And that's my hope. And I'd like to see a safer world where we can actually own that safety and not just have the media tell us that it's unsafe everywhere, but really come together as a community and be that.
Well, thank you, Jared Truby from Cat and Cloud Coffee for sharing that with us and sharing your vision. I really appreciate everything that you shared today.
Thank you. Told you we'd do an hour easy.
You are so right. Listeners, please check ksqd.org for a podcast of the show with links to information we've discussed. Don't forget next week's show, continuing our series on abortion with a discussion about abortion and religion. Thanks for listening, and please return again tomorrow for more Talk of the Bay. We have first person singular coming up now.